In this video, we're going to talk about how to graph one variable inequalities that are not compound inequalities. So to get started, we have to make sure we know our inequality symbols. So we have a greater than symbol, greater than or equal to, less than, and we also have less than or equal to. So make sure you know what the symbols look like and what they mean. So some key ideas for graphing is you have to know whether or not you're going to have an open or a closed circle. An open circle basically means you're getting very, very, very close to the number that has the open circle, but that the number is not a solution. But if you have a closed circle, that means that number is also a solution. You also have to know which direction to shade. So should you shade on the number line to the left or to the right? So let's look at a few examples. We're going to first look at some examples of inequalities that have already been graphed and how to write the corresponding inequality from the graph. So if we look here, we know that there are a couple things to consider. First of all, we see right here at -5, there is a closed circle. That means that we have to either have a less than or equal to symbol or a greater than or equal to symbol. So we can go ahead and eliminate some of our choices. So we know we're either dealing with the less than or equal to or greater than or equal to. So the other thing we have to consider is which direction are we shading. So I see that we're shading to the right, which means that x could be -5 or any number bigger than that. So we have to have this inequality. X is greater than or equal to -5. We know this one doesn't work because it's shading in the wrong direction. I do want to put out a word of caution. A lot of people say that you just look at the inequality symbol and that is showing you how your arrow should go. So notice that like in this case, the greater than or equal to symbol looks like a right arrow, so you shade to the right. And that strategy tends to work, but that only works when your variable is on the left side. So for instance, I just wrote down here the same inequality, but with the x on the right side instead, which yeah, mathematicians typically put the variable on the left side, but this inequality is still true and it represents the same graph. But in this case, your inequality symbol looks like you should be shading to the left if you use that rule. And so that's kind of like a trick that you have to be really careful about. And for me, it's easier just to think about what does my inequality say? And in this case, we want numbers like that are -5 or bigger. So I just want to make sure that my inequality says that. So just a word of caution for that trick. Feel free to use it, but make sure that your variable is on the left side if you are going to use it. But you do need to know what it means. Let's look at another example. So in this case, we have an open circle. And an open circle means that we cannot include the value our circle's around. So in this case, it's 6. So we know that x can't equal 6. So that eliminates anything with an inequality that has like an equal to part. So again, we have to see which direction we're going. And in this case, we're having numbers that are bigger than 6. So we have to use that greater than symbol. This problem has a closed circle at x equals -2, but it's shading to the left this time. So we need numbers that are at -2 or smaller. So our inequality is x is less than or equal to -2. And our last example shows an open circle around -7. So we know it's not an equal to problem, right? Because we have the open circle and it's shading to the left. So we need numbers that are smaller than -7. So that's got to be x is less than -7. Now let's look at how to actually graph the inequality when we see it. So over here, we want to graph the interval represented in inequality notation on the number line. So we have x is greater than 3. So again, we have to think about, should we have an open or a closed circle? Because we have a greater than symbol, we know it's an open circle. So we do an open circle at 3, and then we have to decide which direction we're moving. We want numbers bigger than 3, so that's like 4, 4.5, 5, 6, so on and so forth. And as you start typing in or plotting those points, really you're seeing that you should be going to the right, and that's going to represent all the numbers that are bigger than 3. For this one, we want to graph x is less than or equal to 7. So that means that x could be 7. So let's go ahead and put a closed circle at 7. But then we want all the numbers that are smaller than 7. So like 6, 5, 4.5, -3, so on and so forth. So we're going to have as straight as possible line going to the left. Make sure you put that arrow to show that even though we're not going on forever like ourselves, that arrow means that we're including all the numbers, even numbers smaller than -8. So x less than or equal to 7, got that closed circle, and we're doing that arrow to the left to show all the numbers smaller than 7. This one says x is greater than or equal to -6. So we know we have to have that closed circle at -6 because x is greater than or equal to -6. And that also means we need numbers that are bigger than -6. So we're going to draw that arrow to the right and make sure we have an arrow by putting the arrow on the end of that. Let's look at one more example. So this problem says x is less than 0. So we know that x cannot be 0, so we have to do an open circle. And we want an open circle around 0 to clarify. And we also want numbers that are smaller than 0. So we're going to go to the left because those are where the numbers smaller than 0 are. And that's basically how we deal with graphing inequalities with one variable that aren't compound inequalities. Make sure you remember to consider whether you have an open or closed circle by looking at your inequality. If you have greater than or equal to or less than or equal to, you're going to have a closed circle. If you have greater than or less than, that's going to be an open circle. And then you just have to decide which way to shade, either left or right. And that's basically it.